Or is it on the Archaeo RPG one? All right, cool, cool. It will be. There we go. All right, look at that. Hey, here we are.
What's up, guys?
Hey, welcome.
Thanks. Been a long week. I'm excited to get my feet wet in this finally.
Let's do it. All right, thank you. We'll try not to ruin the whole conference in this last day.
Yeah.
All right, so we are live. All right, we will let you know if we need a hand with anything. So what's up, everybody? We're officially live. I think I can't see the channel on the Archaeo RPG one yet, so I don't know if my. Here we go. Is this? I think it's loading up. Yep, here we are. So here we already got Mike in the chat. We're just
Nice.
Starting up now, so we're officially at 10. So Scott is going to be the one driving around here, and
Like an absolute lunatic.
like a lunatic. Bruce and I are going to be talking and rambling on in your ear for the next. How long are we here? An hour.
Yes.
All right, awesome. So Scott, give us a little intro on the game first.
So, Days Gone is a post-pandemic world. So, like most post-apocalyptic games, right? It's a zombie virus that takes over the world. They call them freaks. They're pretty closely related one in the game. You'll actually see they look a lot like the ones from I Am Legend, and they behave a lot in the same way. They don't like the light. They come out when it's darker, when the weather's colder. But the unique thing about this game is you get a good look at different ways that different people survive in that post-pandemic world, including a lot of conversation around what their lives were like before it happened and how they got to where they are after. And so where we are in the game right now, I was kind of hoping to get to a point later in the game before this. But where we're in the game right now, you've got 2 of the 5 camps in the game that you can go and explore. One is a work camp that pays you to bring survivors to them so they can put them to work, creating a farm on a volcanic mountainside. And the other is, the only way to explain it is it's a bunch of preppers got together on a lakeside.
I fully expect these groups in an apocalypse.
And entirely.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Totally. The reason I was hoping to get to later in the game is there is a point where you are captured by, there's a group in this game called the Rippers, and they're probably my favorite group in this game, not because they're cool or anything, but because they're a unique concept, I think, in these games, where, like, you get raiders and stuff like that in every post-apocalyptic game, but these guys aren't raiders. They worship the zombies as being freed of all of the pain and suffering that came with going through the pandemic and surviving it. So all of these people have lost loved ones to the pandemic, or so either they were zombies, or they were killed by people trying to survive, or they were killed by the zombies. And so these people have all kind of come around to agree on the fact that they wish they were zombies, because then they will have forgotten everything that they've lost. They won't suffer through that pain anymore. And they literally will just take people off the roadside and torture them either to death or until the person finally breaks and says, yes, I'll join you. So there's a point where you get captured by them and you spend a lot of time in their camp trying to escape. So you get a good look at them. I was kind of hoping to get to that point, but I'm not sure that I'll be able to.
I was going to say, how long do you think it's going to take us until we hit this point in 2020? Is this like November, or are we talking more like August?
It depends on whether or not the election gets moved.
Okay, that's fair.
Then this will be like 5 days after the election.
Yeah, pretty much.
Whichever way it goes.
I mean, either way it goes. So the interesting point of this game. So Bruce and I have never played this game, and you've been playing this game for a little bit now, and I think it's interesting to look at some of the post-apocalyptic games, and most of them end up being survival games, specifically for the obvious reasons that you would think. And I'm actually intrigued by this one because it seems to focus a lot on the aspect of the different tribe groups and the different peoples and or new species like things. Whereas it's not unlike Fallout, which I know you are specialized in, Scott. And I feel like it's a little bit less of a crafting survival than Fallout. This is more of a scientific fantasy.
That's actually
pandemic.
That's actually exactly what it is. And there actually are points in this game. So that in this, the government is still around. They're obviously not a part of society at this point. Society is really fragmented into groups of like-minded people that are kind of sequestering themselves away from each other. But the government is still around in the form of Nero, which is this game's version of FEMA. So there are points where you're trying to, like, Nero choppers start appearing in this part of Oregon again. This is now 2 years after the end of the world. And so you're actually sneaking around and trying to listen in on their conversations, learn what you can about what happened and how they're still around. Because your wife was seriously beginning of the pandemic, the first few days, and dies. So you're trying to figure out why, because you put her on a chopper first thing in the game. You put her on a Nero chopper that's going to take her to a MASH unit to help her recover from her wounds. And by the time that you get to this area where I am right now, the whole place has been overrun. It's been less than 24 hours since you put her on the chopper. Whole place has been overrun. There's thousands of zombies there. Nobody's left alive. So as far as you know, Nero's gone. The people who were here are gone. Your wife is dead. And the Nero choppers start arriving. And very early in the game, you're listening to the conversation of one of them. And the Nero officer who was in charge, in command of the chopper that you put your wife on, is still alive. And so you're trying to find out more information about that. As one of the many storylines throughout the game. But Nero, like I said, is very closely related to FEMA, and there's a lot of distrust, obviously, that comes along with that. But as you're listening in on their missions, and you get a lot of flack from some of the other groups in the game when they figure out that you're the one who's been following them around, because they think you're encouraging them to come back to this area. But as you're following them around, you start to listen in, and probably halfway through the game, they get into a lot of bioanthropology of these creatures.
Is it like a COVID side effect that we haven't learned about yet?
It very well could be.
I fully expect
The
this
COVID
mutation.
vaccine is gonna just like be neurotoxins that are just gonna turn everyone into zombies. Is that what you're saying?
Oh my God.
Is this your political sci-fi? Is this your political bandit? Is this why we can't wear masks?
This is why we should wear masks.
This is why we should wear masks. This is what we're gonna rename the stream, guys. This is why we should wear masks. Hashtag 2020.
Hashtag wear your damn mask.
Oh. COVID trigger warning. I sorry about that. Yeah, we should have put a COVID trigger warning here. Not to be insensitive, I do want to make a good point about that though. Like, in all seriousness, we are not putting any light on the current pandemic situation, even though we are playing a zombie game today. We do take that very seriously, and I do want to make that point. We may make jokes about it, but the three of us do use dark humor a lot to survive through difficult situations. So I wanted to preface that. That is a solid thing to know. But yes, you absolutely should be triggered. This should be something that makes you mad and angry.
So does this start in Portland, is what I'm asking?
It's in Farewell, Oregon. Which is, yeah. So the whole game takes place right around the area of, where is it? I think it's the Crescent Lakes region of Oregon.
I think I can walk.
I can point to Oregon on a map, not any part of it, but it's that one in the northwest.
Oregon's that place with the water on one side and like the knot on the other, right?
It's the one that's a little bit Washington and a little bit California.
It's that one that's in between those two states I know.
Yeah.
So what I find also interesting is so they have this whole apocalypse thing down, and it's all these zombies, right?
Yep.
Are they attracted to like sound and such things? Because he chose to use a motorcycle as his. I think. Well, I don't know how long the pandemic's been around, but I would have switched to like a Tesla or something.
Well, so that's the thing, is all the infrastructure's gone. A lot of bridges were bombed out to try and slow like hordes from coming through, which like they're hordes. They're gonna find a way around. They're like ants. And so a lot of the infrastructure's gone. A lot of the roads and tunnels are clogged up by just cars that are jam-packed together because they were in a traffic jam and a horde came through. And just like that, all the people are gone. You know, so you've got all these cars that are blocking roads and all that. Motorcycle is a much more, compared to a car, right, in the mountains, a motorcycle is a goat.
That's fair. So, Scott, real quick, this is a good point. Is this just a prepper power fantasy to deal with a pandemic using guns?
No, not really.
It is interesting. I did see that, and I thought the same thing as Bruce when I first saw this game. I'm like, are we really we're gonna do this? We're gonna be this guy using guns and buzzsaws and motorcycles. But when you're thinking of traversal purposes, a horse is more susceptible to disease. A car is louder and lets off more, obnoxiousness, and a motorcycle probably is more fuel efficient in the mountains.
Well, a horse isn't just more susceptible to disease, it's specifically more susceptible to this disease. It's, by the time you get to the later points in the game, you're finding crows, you're finding bears, you're finding wolves, deer, all of these have been infected with it. So one of the things you can do in this game is you can go out and actually hunt for meat and turn that in for credits at some of the encampments. And by the time you get later in the game, it actually gets harder and harder to find meat that you can sell because you're running into animals that are infected.
How is who not? Who are you referring to? How is who not dead? RV Fantasies? Ah, right. Plot device. Okay, we're good. I'm sure this isn't how most realistic scenarios would go, but we see so many post-apocalyptic pandemic scenarios where zombies have overruled the world, or vampires, or some other misrepresentation of a mythological existence where over
She's been wounded.
over forcing these zombies. I mean, we've talked about this before, where this could be like a failed neurotoxin that just kind of parasites to your brain, ruining your nervous system and decision-making skills. Like, yeah, okay, zombie. Or we could talk more mythological zombie, which we have all discussed in very fair length.
So let me ask you this: who here remembers the Siphon Filter games from the 90s and early 2000s?
I remember hearing about them.
Vaguely.
I didn't have a PlayStation at the time.
So in those games, you're playing as a government agent whose job is to track down basically terrorist organizations who are trying to use bioterrorism to destroy the world.
Yeah, it's like the old, this one's not Splinter Cell, but kind of, sort of, right?
Yeah, exactly. But in those games,
Okay, Boozer, let's go.
you're working for an organization that actually gets name dropped later in this game. And at first I thought it was just a cool callback because it's made by the same people that made those games. But then you find documentation, it's like an Easter egg you can find. You find documentation that name drops the characters from those games, the protagonists that you play as, and that they failed to stop this one.
Where are you going?
And so that's pretty much exactly what this is some entity created this virus with the intent of either creating a panic and coming to the rescue to gain power, or just to destroy the world. That part isn't really made clear. But this is literally the end result of bioterrorism.
You coming?
All right. So you're saying instead of just no conspiracy theories fueled here, a naturally occurring pandemic like COVID is not going to yield as extreme effects because it's not being forced, whereas the government could be antagonizing this one as much as they could be trying to, quote unquote, resolve and cure it.
Exactly.
All right.
What did you do?
What I'd also be interested is what would survive this as society rebuilds, because you have all these great falls of empires throughout history, and the artifacts we see from that is just very vague picture of what they could have had, because like obviously like our paperwork, most of our paperwork isn't going to survive. The paper will degrade and things like that. So these people, like hundreds of years after this post-apocalyptic thing, would just find like our plastic.
And that is actually another really great point to bring up, because that's actually addressed in this game. Very, very late in the game, you come across I don't remember what they call themselves, the New Oregon Militia or something like that, but they're a militia group that grew out of the pandemic, and they took over Crater Lake, and so Crater Lake, it's a lake that's in the cone of a volcano now dormant volcano, and there are plenty of caves on Wizard Island, and I mean this is true in real life as well. There's plenty of caves on Wizard Island in the middle, and what they do is they set up camp on that island. They build a north bridge and a south bridge to get to the island, so it's very controlled access. They're heavily armed because they have everything that they've salvaged from the old, from the pre-pandemic military. And they literally send teams out to collect scientific information, music, all of that, and they keep it in the caves, and they call it their Ark.
Ah, okay. Sounds likely.
I mean, the whole thing is undermined by the fact that the colonel who runs it is an absolute religious lunatic, but it's a cool concept in itself.
What's a post-apocalyptic game without a cultist lunatic, right? You really can't have one, can you? I mean, this game is like vaguely in the same like generalized. If we're talking post-apocalyptic games with semi-survival aspects and unrealistic noise complaints, I would say that puts us in a similar realm as like you play the newest Far Cry game. You got Far Cry 5, and then there was Far Cry New Dawn, which took place directly after Far Cry 5. I don't want too much spoiler warning, but you don't know by now. Maybe you should have played the game. There was some nuclear event. Again, not going to do too many spoilers on it, but the Far Cry New Dawn was kind of a standalone direct sequel to Far Cry 5, where it's like 5 years later or something after a nuclear mess, and you're in the same exact map as you were in Far Cry 5. And it's got bands of people. You got your people who are now affected by the fallout. Like all of the animals are now got flora all over them. So you're getting like a more vibrant version of a post-apocalyptic, and it's less virus-fueled, more like, yeah, we're just dealing with radiation now. Which again, it's really interesting to see how the encampments rebuild themselves over time. Like how do humans respond to being wiped out? Like why are we still living in this same exact area we were in if it's just worse than it was before? But people still do it anyways because they don't want to stray too far from home. But that's another conversation entirely,
Right. Well, I mean, in this scenario, at least, you don't really have the means to get that far away.
Damn it.
Oh, yeah, it's fair too, because even with a motorcycle, you're probably not going that extremely far out of your range. It's why you have a map that's probably not as big as some other open world games. It's just because, I mean, the map's probably huge. Still, it's like you're not going to get too far without, getting shot off your motorcycle.
We have a question in chat. Do you think that post-apocalyptic media such as this perpetuate that someone's false idea of collapse when it comes to ancient people. Example, the widespread but incorrect data found in most media that the Maya no longer exist, when in fact that there are Maya living and thriving today.
TLDR on that, yes. Pretty much.
I mean, I think that I would say yes and no. So people who are not looking at all of the data, and sometimes it's on purpose, sometimes they just don't have access to or don't know where to access that data. I would say yes, absolutely. But
Should work.
if you're looking at all of the data points, right? So let's take this as an example. You've got all of these people that they've banded together for survival, and they're trying to rebuild their own version of what their pre-pandemic society was, however well they can do that to survive. And so if you look at stuff like that, right, and you consider that point, like, how can you even say that the Maya just disappeared? You know, what's stopping you from making the assumption or asking the question? Obviously, they didn't just all disappear off the face of the earth. How did the survivors rebuild?
So this is actually interesting. So if anybody here has played Shadow of the Tomb Raider, it actually, to be more direct when we're talking about Central and South American native peoples, Shadow of the Tomb Raider was a game that I played very recently. Again, it was like they had one of the native peoples in the game were literally hidden like under, like it was almost underground. It was kind of Journey to the Center of the Earth-ish. Like Lara Croft had to go through these caves and stuff, and she's like, they're still here, they're still thriving. I was like, well, this is like a serious problem with over-sensationalization of these like lost colonies and lost societies. They hid from colonization all this time. It's like, okay, but you're kind of discounting things. I mean, at the beginning of the game, they do address how like there are people still observing local traditions and people who still are thriving as they are in the world these days. But the problem is like these games do that very, very frequently. They do help sensationalize that, and unfortunately movies do the same thing. We were talking about this in one of the discussions before about certain Native American cultural perspectives or stories that have since been just turned into horror games, just completely warped, so that only thing anyone's ever heard about this XYZ being or creature is now turned into the equivalent of a Slender Man story that was created on the internet. Like, people don't value the stories for what they are, and they go around throwing around words, like we were saying, be sensitive about your words and your taboo. And sometimes people just take it like it's a horror story. They don't take it for the value that it is, the culture behind the story. And I think that's easily where these games can fall into that perspective as well. They definitely fuel it.
And so that actually leads me to something I've thought about a few times, and that is, how do you create a story, or even just bring people back down from the sense of sensationalization down to something more realistic and sensitive, and something more culturally relative, where, like, instead of people buying into the sensationalization, because that's where we've been driving things, right? Instead of things getting more and more ridiculous over time and over the top, right? We're not progressing toward Michael Bay movies, we're progressing away from them.
Yeah.
Is that something viable? How do you do such a thing?
Son of a bitch! What happened? You okay? No, it's fine.
Well,
I think
see,
they were just,
we were talking about
They were
this
trying
not
to
long
hit me,
ago,
I
the
would
three of
be
us,
dead.
and we were saying this, that it's like, with all of these things, I mean, some of the stuff that's going on in chat right now that I'm looking at, that was a good point. Sorry to backtrack for a second. The Lara Croft does that actually in all three of those video games. Sorry, Scott, to backtrack, but It's that I have to save these people thing, and it totally like hammers my point home. I'm so sorry to anybody who's from the UK here, but it totally hammers the point home that Lara Croft is British, and she feels the need to go to this native people's community and like save them from an oppressive corporation slash security unit. I just there's just so much symbolism in that. I don't know if it's lost on the developers or what, but we see that so often in some of the movies that we're talking about here now, and I don't even know where to take it from there.
The British.
the British.
Every country has an Independence Day but them, for a reason.
Well, it's the whole colonialism. The colonialism argument can be made in I'm trying to get rid of the beat a dead horse phrase. So to crush a stone to dust, you know, that there's a reason we see those themes. It's because they're very, very prevalent throughout all of history.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like the Romans thought they were saving every culture. They just went like, jacked up.
Well, everyone who knows me in this entire weekend, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again right now. I'm going to bring up Assassin's Creed, and I'm not even sorry for it. Totally not sorry. I'm bringing it up again, and you all have to sit here and listen to me.
If it makes anybody feel better, offline, this is exactly what he does. This is nothing
all the
new.
time.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, but seriously, so that was a conversation I had in the Assassin's Creed part of the channel the other day. Was I'll be very intrigued to see what happens with the new game that comes out this year for Assassin's Creed, because they've been trying to be really historically accurate, especially we were talking about that with the sandbox. I think it's going to be fun to see, because I heard first that they were doing Vikings, and I was like, oh sweet, we're doing Vikings, we're going to have some Norse mythology. The end game is going to have us fighting Odin on the Bifrost with ravens flying around us and giant Fenris wolves or whatever. But what I was really intrigued by was when they officially said that the game starts in Norway and then ends up in the UK, which I didn't even think they were going to move that. But that's the same way we were talking about the British, and it's interesting that the Roman Viking portion of the UK people don't talk about in history as much. So everyone heard the game was coming out and they're like, why are the Vikings going to British people land? And it's a relevant historical fact that is worth chatting about. What do we got going in the chat now? Trying to capture a zombie alive is rarely a good idea. Well, do you catch it unalive, or just like you kind of just contain the thing, right? Scott, do the thing.
What thing?
Just do the thing. Detain a zombie.
That
not a
thing
thing.
you do.
That's not a thing.
Do that thing you
Nobody
do. Nobody
does that thing. That's not a thing that anybody does.
Do people? You have like what is it, the freakers? Do they recognize the zombies as people? And what does that creature, wherever it is, leave behind?
Can you explain the question more?
Is there any more? Once they turn from this virus, do they have any type of community? You said they only come out at night, so they're probably hiding somewhere during the day, or is it just a full feral creature?
So they actually do. So they'll move in hordes.
Okay.
And the way that it's explained in the game is it's sort of like a hive mind kind of thing. There's there's the mention of pheromones, which any bioanthropologist in here is going to just absolutely lose their mind at, because yeah, there's like it leans very heavily on the use of pheromones.
That is just that is great. That is great.
And
about those directions.
so the reason that you get, and I guess the explanation of the game anyway, the reason that you get like these one-off zombies or these small groups of zombies that are like 5 or 10 is because the horde will come through and they'll get separated from it one way or another when the horde goes off to hibernate during the day, and they just get stuck out there looking for their horde, I guess. So yes, they do have a sense of community.
Could you use a ride?
Yes,
To a
I
point.
could. Thank you for
As
finally
they
offering.
progress,
And Sarah.
so in the
Oh.
game, the Nero
Sorry about the
soldiers
mess.
call them by like phase 1, phase 2, phase
I
3
don't- how do
zombies.
I,
So the
Okay.
phase 1 is just they're
I just
Lego.
feral humans, but they're moving as one, right? You've got these massive hordes of thousands of them moving through areas and just wreaking havoc. Phase 2, they start to kind of break away from that, and they actually, and they touch on this later in the game,
Thank you so much.
they'll change their clothes, they'll
No
clean
problem.
themselves, they'll
It's just,
loot, and
there
like
are no bars out here,
one of the
so-
times that you track
Sure
down a
there
Nero
is. There's
chopper,
a place
they're
called
looking
Crazy
at a dead
Willie's up the
zombie, and
road.
it's got
There's,
a brand new watch
I
that
meant
was
cell
taken out
phone
of a
reception.
long
I knew
abandoned
what you
store on its
Right,
wrist.
Of course.
So are they just
Anyway.
looters, or do they have?
So what's a nice
that
girl like
it
you
all
doing in
No,
a
it's
place like
it's
this?
it's their crow brain.
You know,
It's
I ask
shiny. I
myself
need it.
that all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Yeah,
do
that's
research.
fair. So this
Yeah.
game
You know,
is
for my study things.
I wouldn't say it's
Had no
close
idea what
in
research
except for
was.
the fact that
Sorry.
it equals zombie.
I do plans.
That's probably the only
Study plants.
related thing about it.
Yeah.
But anytime I think of a zombie game, my brain immediately goes back to one of the few that I actually did enjoy playing, because I'm not usually a zombie person. I have so many issues with the conversation of mythological zombies and modern.
Hey, look out!
It just drives me nuts. So I end up thinking about the Dead Island series. And oh geez, what's that one with the parkour? The sequel to Dead Island.
Dying Light. Oh.
Thank you, Dying Light.
I
The new
love
one
that game.
is probably never going to come out, but Dying Light, I put so many hours into that game,
Are you
and I
okay?
thought it was really
Oh,
interesting to
Lordy, that
see
was
how a
close.
city would react,
Hey,
because that one's more of
you sure
a
you're okay?
these
Yeah,
zombies
fine,
kind
I
of
just-
don't have at all thinking. They're just kind of people drones, except for the nightmare ones that come out at night.
Hey,
And that one was always an interesting
Cell phone
perspective too.
reception.
Is this whole, if we're gonna create these new
Hey.
zombies, I guess they're gonna be their own
Yeah, I'm
entity.
fine,
They're no
just-
longer really zombies
the car
anymore.
you
That's
gave
why
me
I
is a
think
real
most
piece of
games end
shit.
up calling them freaks and
I
things
need a
like
tow.
that, so that they're just like, it's not a
I'm
zombie
on,
game. They're like, everyone's like, yeah, it's a zombie
this
game. They're like,
source.
but it's
I don't know
not.
where I
It's
am.
different.
Road
And they're like, it's a
42?
zombie game.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
again,
I'm,
that's one of the unique things about
Okay,
this
I'll see
game
when
is
we
that
get here.
it's not just they're zombies, they're gonna kill you and eat you kind of game.
To your car.
The
tow truck.
They actually make a point in the game to touch on like you can't
I don't know.
outstarve these zombies. Like you can't just go into a hidey hole and wait for them to go away because they're foraging for food the same way that like a ruminant would in the wild. They're eating the same things that deer do.
So they're eating other deer at this point, because aren't the deer infected too?
All right, screw it.
Yeah,
let's
the
go.
deer get infected.
Just drive a little careful this
Like I
time.
said, bears and wolves and crows also get infected.
Yeah, because we love zombie bears. Those are always fun.
You weren't really lost,
They
were you?
they're a bitch to fight. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Regular bears are too.
They are,
Certainly
but a
know you're
rager bear is just a whole other level, and they're they're
No,
grizzlies.
from
They're
Seattle.
huge.
The company that I work for,
So it's not a good time.
So
Short
Right,
round. Is that a
Kings in the
good
middle of
blink twice
nowhere.
or a bad blink twice
Research plants.
for
That's
zombies
right,
and
I
pop
already told
culture?
you I
Question.
forgot.
Not question, but comment.
yeah, so
Because
the
we were
company
having
that
a
I
whole
work
conversation
for,
about
they
a
do
different
work for
portrayal
this
of zombies
bioengineering
just
firm, and,
throughout time,
some of the
and
plants
it-
that I look
it's
at
so
are
exhausting.
I
that
think it's-
We've gotten to this point with zombies.
I think it's like the meme blink, the slow. What the fuck blink? Like, I'm this old. This happened that quick.
Well,
What the
I'd
hell?
say that when it comes to zombies, zombies are probably like, it's just such a exhausting
Alright,
trope at
gentlemen.
this point. That to see a game like actually be able to pull off making a zombie where you're not like, oh, it's another zombie game. I think that's the work it takes for me. Like that was why I brought up Dying Light, because when Dying Light came out and I heard what they were doing with it, and it's like it's a zombie game, but it's also a parkour game. I was like, okay, I'm listening. I'm not like totally. Because then you got the see, I can't even remember the names of any of the zombie games. There's the
Smart now, huh?
what's the one when you're in the mall and you're the dude, the reporter, and you just duct tape stuff together.
Oh, the one they had for the Wii.
It was on like all the older systems. It was
What's that game with the zombies with the? Hold on, I'm asking my brother. The game with the zombies with the you duct tape stuff together. It's in the mall. You remember? Do I have to Google this?
I'm out.
It's like
Dead
four of
Rising.
them. Dead Rising. Oh, you said it at the same time he did. Dead
Jinx.
Rising. Jeez.
Give me a
Jeez.
Coke.
Oh my god, that hurt. No, but that's
Oh
like.
my god.
I'll give you. I'll buy you a beer next time I see you.
Oh my god.
There's-
No,
like-
it's him. It's on him. It's on your brother.
Fine, he'll buy you a beer. Whatever.
He's jinxed.
He'll buy you a beer. Yeah, Dead Rising. So the first one was like very gimmicky. It was like, you're a reporter. You're here for 24 hours. You have to like take pictures of the zombie outbreak and stuff. And then the game just went like launching downhill from there. But like the first game was like, okay, I get the concept. It's like we're limited on time. Something, and then the second one, it's like, okay, we're doing the same exact thing. We're still in like a mall, and then the third one, you're like, yeah, Thunderdome, Death Rally, motorcycles, killing as many zombies as I can. I was like, what's happening? And I don't know if they made
The
it.
third one was just Mad Max with zombies.
It precisely, and it was like, okay, now we're just feeding the zombie trope again. Like that's all it was doing at that point. It was just, okay, now we got these undead things running around, and that's it. That's all we're doing anymore. And that's the zombie trope that I'm exhausted with. It just, we never touch on anything else. Meanwhile, you're playing Skyrim or you're playing God of War, and you actually get to experience like Draugrs and other undead creatures that are way more exciting than the rotting jaw zombie. If you're gonna do a zombie like that, like the Romero style, slow walkers, honestly, just play Left 4 Dead. Like, just give me a zone, tell me to kill stuff, and I'll be on my way. Like, I don't need an in-depth story with those mindless zombies.
You mentioned Hungry Jim's. That old pancake house by the East Bridge.
Lumberjack, big stack of pancakes. Yeah, I know the one. Okay.
I think people began this romance of zombie because it's kind of like a guiltless enemy, if you will, kind of like Nazis. You can always shoot Nazis. No one's a problem with that.
Yeah.
But zombies, you don't feel guilt. But if like you're killing other people, it's just like, oh, this is like Call of Duty. I expect that kind of thing.
Well, that's why it's like everyone has so much trouble with Call of Duty or something. But when you're looking at the whole psychological conversation about games like that, like you were saying, like the same thing about like Doom. Doom, you're killing demons. There's no guilt about killing demons. They're demons, right? You gotta rid the world of
It's actually really fun.
Call of Duty stories will mess with you, where you realize that the people you're killing aren't really the bad guys. Really, like, kind of working for the bad guys, but you're not. It becomes a perspective thing. It gets gray.
Yeah. Then you have your.
Yes.
And then you have the other side where you're like killing Nazis or something. It's like Wolfenstein. Wolfenstein's most recent ad campaign for their game was literally F Nazi. And then neo-Nazis on Twitter fought them and said, you are committing injustices by disparaging our group of people. And they said, oh, really? And then they put out like a 2-minute clip of them running through the game, just killing as many Nazis as they could. And they said, we reiterate, F Nazis, we don't care. It was like, what, were you gonna try and fight for your rights as a Nazi? Like, I'm sorry, but I'm not supporting that.
But it's my heritage.
Yeah, that's what to say. Like, it reminds me of, it's my heritage, people. I'm like, yeah? I'm like, it's your heritage. The Confederacy lasted for, what, 4 years? And it's a country that doesn't exist. And actually, we've had gay marriage longer, so it's more your heritage to have two giant dicks crossing each other with a heart under it. That's more your heritage and your history. Sorry.
Honestly,
and they get all offended and melt down.
Honestly, that sounds like a better time, I'm not gonna lie.
It sounds like more fun.
Right?
Look, we've always said that, like, testimony, like, to plug ourselves for a sec, we are never going to judge somebody for what they want to be. I mean, unless you want to be a Nazi, then you can screw up.
Or a Confederate. I hate Confederates.
I mean, that's a very fair point. Who plays COD missions? I thought it was just for the multiplayer. Saying you play Call of Duty for the storyline is literally the equivalent of saying, I read Playboy for the articles.
But I do.
No,
I
see,
don't
that's
play
awful,
any
like,
game.
I really like
do
the
play
Modern
COD
Warfare
story.
storylines.
Yeah, those are really good.
No, they actually are good. But that's
And
my
it's
point,
like-
though. It's like, at this point, it's just multiplayer. And they even realize that when they make something like Warzone free-to-play. And when you have a free-to-play game, it's like, obviously, you're trying to get all the Fortnite kids to come over to play your Call of Duty game. Even though you're like, well, you should get your parents' permission. It's like, when was the last time a 13-year-old got their parents' permission to play Call of Duty Warzone? Probably never.
2001.
Right?
2005
is in that
When
magazine.
GameStop would actually ask you what your age was.
When
Actually, I don't think
GameStop
they were even
actually cared.
GameStop at that point. They weren't even GameStop at that point. They were. Oh, what were they
Funko Land?
called?
Was it
Funko Land, and there was Funko Land, and there was one other one.
Jeez. That was back when I was renting games from Blockbuster. I was like begging my dad on a Friday night, "Can I please
That's
get a game for
interesting.
my PS2?"
Maybe down by the creek.
Ooh, what do we have? We have some word.
Gotta look around.
Playboy has some good articles. I'm sure it does. Let's see. Mike says he uses COD as an example of the Orientalist stereotypes in his people and cultures of the Middle East course. That is a very, very good conversation. And since I'm not positive anybody else has actually utilized Call of Duty this weekend, because honestly, we're all so sick of talking about it in this format. But to talk about Call of Duty for a minute while we're on that topic, I'd say a very important point, because Call of Duty, my problem with Call of Duty at this point is, if anyone's played the most recent Modern Warfare game, you are most of the time playing as we're against the terrorists, we're going to take out the terrorists, we have to kill the terrorists.
Alongside the terrorists.
Yeah,
It's,
exactly.
It's literally
exactly,
Syria with the
exactly.
YPG.
Right, yeah. And
They knew
so,
someone doing that mission.
Yeah, exactly. And you go and then you're looking at that, and then there's like one mission jammed in the very end of the game where you join the rebels, and the rebel team is, I'm so sorry for this, I enjoyed the mission because I thought it was like, yeah, let's go, and then I looked into it when I played it the second time, and I was like, oh, that's a little bit cringy. It was like, it's in the, like, some Istan in the Middle East, northern Asian border, and it's like this oppressed country, and the soldiers are there, and then the terrorists are there, but you are in working with this group of all-female rebels. And it was like, I wanted to like this scene, but it felt like it was trying to be like forced for people so they couldn't fight the story and be like, there's not enough representation in this or something. But it's
Well,
like,
there's
it
an
doesn't matter
actual-
whose side they're on, you know?
There's an
It's
actual
like
group
this.
like that. In the YPG, they have like a whole female unit that it's extra shame for ISIS when they hunt them that they're killed by a female.
Well, yes, but see, that's the point where it's like it's over. It felt less respectful, more over glorification, is what I was trying to say.
But it's hyper realistic. Like,
is
I know people who
hyper-realistic,
fight
but how many
with them.
people
I was supposed to
who-
fight with them, and I was like, shit.
How many people who play Call of Duty do you think actually like?
Well, I think half of them are
Acknowledge
straight
that, you know?
misogynists, but
Yeah, exactly. So there was a whole outburst in that game where it was like, you gotta target your audience. Where Activision and Infinity Ward were like, yeah, we literally do not care what a single human being who plays our games thinks. We're gonna do what we want. Which I was like, good for you, good for you. Like, solid representation. They didn't make it out to be like every single human being in this game is an evil creature. It was like they tried. I mean, when they had the backstory on the people who are the rebels in the game, they actually show you get to play as them as a child, so you get to see where their anger comes from. So it did highlight a few of that, but it was like more focused on the like, stay frosty, let's go infiltrate this house and just kill everything inside with no consequence. Any of them, you know. So it was a bit interesting on that, but you know, that's the whole casualty of war conversation we had not long ago, where games kind of just, you know, do what they want. What are you doing, Scott? Are you
Fighting
in the
rippers.
game? Oh, okay. I was like, I hadn't looked.
I'm trying to find a little girl who has been surviving for now 2 years, I guess, on her own since this whole thing started.
So why does she need your help?
he's the savior.
Because
you're the white man.
No, because the lady that runs the slave camp told me to go find this person.
All right. Sounds.
It's not that I'm a supporter of child slavery. It's that the story won't advance if I don't do it.
Okay, fair enough. So the Rippers are like bandits, right? That's all. They're like
No, the
highwaymen
Rippers.
bandits.
No, the Rippers are the ones I was saying. They go around and they'll like capture people and torture them to death if they
Oh.
don't agree to join their
Cult.
ridiculous cult of doing PCP and
Oh,
mutilating
yeah.
I
themselves.
was gonna say
That's-
they're alt-right, but yeah.
Ladder.
Well,
I
I mean,
mean-
they're like the I can never be wrong anti-maskers. You know, like
So they
faced
literally
with
have
Yeah,
no
alright.
faced with an overwhelming like breakdown of society because of a pandemic. I would argue that probably a lot of the anti-maskers would be like, oh, maybe I should have worn a mask. Like this is actually a big deal. And then some of them would have been like, nope, wouldn't have helped.
No, so it's at that point though, you're like, so you're saying that the Rippers are like this entire group of people that are just too ignorant to admit they're wrong, that it's driven them to the point of just doing drugs
Fanaticism.
and shooting random people.
Not shooting random people. Like I said, they're
Trying to
convinced.
convert random people.
They're convinced that, and like anytime that you have an interaction with one of the Rippers in the game, they tell you you are lost and we are found, right? And so they feel that anybody who hasn't come around to their way of thinking is still lost in this mire of sadness from losing
God, I hate
everything
cults.
that they had. And they believe that once you get yourself hooked on PCP and go on a million trips and mutilate the absolute hell out of yourself, that
Is this your room?
you're going to be found, right? You've
It's really great.
been relieved of
Are
all of
these
your
yours?
woes,
No,
and all you have left to do in life is just
that's mine.
get more people involved in their cult.
This one's for gymnastics.
All right, hold on a sec. Archie
I
Fantasy,
should have
jump
won
in.
first place, but Missy King, she cheated.
Lisa.
Cults don't make sense to begin with.
Gunshots outside. It's not safe here.
I was
Now,
at
if we-
school. And my mom called me and told me to come home right away and not stop. And they would be here waiting for me and we would leave together. And I got here and there was a note that said they left with some men and I didn't know what to do. So I hid. I didn't know what to do.
It's all right. It's okay. It's okay. Lisa, not far from here, there's a camp. And you really ought to let me take you there.
No.
There are people there. There are people, I know them. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's a work camp, and to eat, you have to work. Life is gonna be hard, but at least you ain't gonna starve.
No, my mom's coming here for me.
Okay, is this your mommy? Well, you said she didn't come home, right? So...
No, that actually does happen in this game. There are plenty of people. Actually, this little girl does eventually decide that she's done feeling the loss of her parents and goes over to that side and
I know she is.
leaves.
Okay. Stay close.
No, you have to. You
He had to be
Right.
a savior.
The men with the guns. Are they still out there?
No, we don't gotta worry.
Oh, it absolutely is. It absolutely is.
Lots of sick people.
I mean, you're absolutely right. But that's, I mean, the only reason that I haven't really brought that up as a point is because that's not really anything new in video games.
We should go. We shouldn't be out here.
Can I bring up Assassin's Creed again?
Nobody can stop you, so go for it.
All right. So I did bring this up briefly in another one of the panels, and I 100% will be talking about it tonight in the racism / misogyny / sexism / everything panel tonight. There were recent notes of Assassin's Creed and Ubisoft like taking away female storylines and major female characters. There were two canceled games that were going to have lead female characters. Odyssey was supposed to only have Cassandra, and the whole Layla trilogy, Layla Hassan, the out of Animus character, like we were going to see Origins was supposed to, like, no spoilers for anybody who's played Origins or anything, but like if you play the beginning of Origin, you obviously in the game you play as Bayek. He's a Medjay, and his wife is one of the first assassins as well, Aya. The game was originally supposed to start with Bayek and his child being murdered in front of Aya, and then you were supposed to take the reins as Aya and completely like create the assassin order eventually. Like that's how the game was supposed to go, which I was like, how on earth did we not get that? That was going to be beautiful. And then even in the new game, go for it.
Come on, get on. We have to...
All right, let's go.
Who?
No, you're right. Yeah, let's go.
Come on, kid.
Hey, what's your name?
Deacon. My name's Deacon. Lisa, how did you live out here alone during all this time?
Yup.
You don't talk much, do you?
My dad's a rock hound. He used to take me out here looking for thunder eggs.
Thunder eggs? What is...
They're rocks, but when you cut them open, they're really pretty inside.
Okay.
What?
That sounds great.
We used to go all over. Belknap Crater, the lava flow and Black Crater, everywhere. Do you think he's at the camp too?
I don't know, kid. Shit, someone's in the tunnel.
What?
Here, listen to me. The gunshots that you heard, those were really bad.
Let's see.
Do you understand?
Well, see, going right off of that, that's why I think
Stay here,
that
find some place
I'm
to
really
hide.
conflicted when you get to like the
Say
Lara
something,
Croft,
okay?
the new Lara Croft trilogy, because the games like all three of the game follow the monomyth perfectly, and I think that's almost a slap in the face, which is great, but also there's other problems with. When we talk about Assassin's Creed and the like, we were talking about this the other day in that chat, and I was saying when we get to the point of choosing which character do you choose, you have a perspective of a male lead character or a female lead character. Personally, I end up usually selecting the female main character, specifically if there are story differences, because I have been playing games for my entire life, and I always end up playing a game where there's that toxic main male character, and it's just sickening to have to deal with. And you're right, like I'm one of the people, I'm frustrated with that. That's exhausting. It's like I don't want to have to play as that character if that's how people perceive me and people around me in real life. Like I don't want to have a group of people that's being treated unfairly, or it just that's I'm one of those people who's I don't want to have to play as the same character in every single game. And if I don't get to make all the decisions for the character, at the very least, let me be the character I want to be.
You okay?
And if I'm playing like the newest Assassin's Creed, it's like you'll be able to freely switch between male and female Ivor whenever you want. It's part of the customization as if it was hair customization. So it's like they don't even write the female character into the game anymore. It was like the last nail in the coffin for those people who were let go at Ubisoft. It was like the last decision that they made was like, no, you can't even. There's no specifics to the story. You're either male or female. It doesn't matter. You're the Viking leader. I'm like, well, that's just dumb.
Rifles, things like that.
No. Men came and took everything.
Men. Were they like the men in the tunnel, or did they wear uniforms like in the army?
Like the army.
It's literally
But
cosmetic.
they were really dirty, and they carried flags they made themselves. Deschutes County Militia, I think. I don't remember.
Did they have anyone with them? Women? Children?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Tommy would remember.
Tommy?
Tommy Strickland, my best friend. But he's gone. He left with his dad to hide.
Hide? I don't...
His dad built a fallout shelter and put all kinds of stuff in it. Maps, food, water, guns, you know, stuff like that.
Okay, do you know where that is?
No. They wanted me to come with
Yeah,
them.
it's
This
But I
made me
knew my
sad.
mom and dad would come back for me.
it's pretty. It's exhausting at this point, and that's what we were talking. It's
All right, this is
I
it.
mentioned
We're
this to
here.
someone the other day. If you play
Stay
through
with
like
me.
all of the Assassin's Creed games, I was noticing some people in the chat now are saying that they've only played Origins or Odyssey, and I do encourage you to play through some of the older games that they've made too, because when you're looking at Altair or Ezio and the earlier games, they are how do we say this not lightly, very disturbing misogynist in many aspects, and they immediately discount the female characters at some major points of the game. And even talking into, I mean, you don't get that as much from Desmond because half of his team is strong female characters, but even with that, like he discounts Lucy all the time, and it's they just wrote it in, and once you know that Ubisoft was doing this for years, you can see it even worse in the game. Like Ezio walks around like he owns every person in Florence, and he walks
Kinda
around and
does,
just
though.
climbs into women's windows or something in one of the scenes. It was like he expects her to be his. That's how he takes it. And then when he meets with the different people who teach him how to steal and everything, it's like he just assumes that the women are the weaker characters, and it's not as prominent as it could have been, but it's still there. It's written in the voice acting. You can hear it in the intonation of the voices. So the fact that they've been doing this for years with their games, if they had made female assassins into the game earlier, I'm telling you, some of the scenes would have been like, some of the gameplay would have been just like I was saying with Origins. Playing as Aya would have been way more fun than playing with Bayek. And when you play through the Discovery Edition, and you can just, or the new one, they just added that whole modding system where you can kind of just play as whatever character you want. I just immediately switched my character to Aya. I'm like, I'm not even doing this. I'm not playing as Bayek anymore.
Help us run this? Then maybe you get some say. Don't get soft on me, Deke.
What can I get for you?
Well, that's like Far Cry. Far Cry is a first-person game. So when you choose, it asks you at the beginning, do you want to be a male or a female? It literally doesn't matter because they never make a reference to either gender or your strengths or weaknesses. It's just the sound of you grunting when you land too hard from a big fall or something, you know? Yeah.
O'Brien. It's goddamn O'Brien. What do you say? Metolius Springs. Metolius Springs. Yeah, I know where that is. Hey, Boozer, you there?
Yeah, Dean.
I just caught a break. That Nero radio might actually be useful.
Wait, I thought you said you couldn't take him on.
No, I can't. But with a little luck, I can get to their chopper without being seen and...
Give him hell, brother. Remember what Jack used to say? Fly faster than your guardian angel can fly.
Like I said, Jack used to say a lot of stupid shit.
Yeah, it's
out.
difficult for those ones too, for them to give you. Which, I mean, to some extent, certain games, like you said, that doesn't as much bother me when I know that at least it's both. Like, it doesn't matter as much. Like, they didn't go out of their way to make it matter, but they also didn't really go out of their way to like purposely make the male character the dominant one. Which that's that gray area. But when we're talking about other games, you look at like the new Watch Dogs game coming out. The first two Watch Dogs games where you play as a dude. you play as a male hacker. It was like there were female hackers that led DedSec and everything. It was like, oh, it was cool. Like they do have a female leader or something. But at the same time, a lot of the hackers that led some of the cool explosions and stuff were the dudes. And the newest one, you literally play as any NPC in the game, and every single character has their own backstory. They respond differently to the different gender representations of the characters, the different storylines and backstory. Like they put a lot of work in it. And I'm stunned that was even Ubisoft. And then you have like some of their other work too. You see which studios can work on which ones. You tell very quickly, because I mean even Halo has better representation for certain sexism themes, because they have I think it was the only archaeologist or anthropologist rather, that you can actively play as. I think someone mentioned this the other day, or I saw it on Instagram. Is Vale. Vale is actually, she's the one with the red Spartan armor in Halo 5 Guardian. She is an elite anthropologist. So they like reference it in all of the extra content, but not really in the game as much. Because you're still Chief running around with your little AI companion who's not wearing any clothes.
Duck, hey, okay, I'll see if I can make time deacon out.
Well, you know, that's another problem with military anthropologists. Well, that was like the military archaeologist conversation comes up again, where you're like, okay, but now it's unethically pointed out that she's learning about the culture of this other group to find their weaknesses so that we kill them. So is she really representation, or is she just a symbol of what we shouldn't be doing? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah, see, that's good. Well, see, that was the same conversation with the new Tomb Raider games. It was like everyone who isn't in the anthro-archaeo field immediately is like, Lara Croft is a rich person who's British, who's pretty, who runs around and shoots the bad guys and swings from stuff, and she collects all this cool treasure that her dad puts all up in their rich mansion. It's like, I have issues with that. But also, she doesn't really personally claim to be an archaeologist. She claims to be somebody who studied archaeology, and that's why she knows how to learn these languages and stuff. So it's like, they do kind of touch on the fact that, no, she is not an archaeologist. Don't call her that. She just has archaeological training.
Look hard enough. You'll see the signs.
They don't even try to hide it. No, it's fine. It's totally fine. Well, see, I'm curious, as Short Round just said, got to be because an archaeologist complained. That's an interesting point. I wonder how many of these games. It'd be interesting to talk to somebody who helps with the storyboarding in the games. Goes to, like, they're like, oh, well, we consulted with cultural heritage individuals. It's like, okay, first off, who did you talk to? Can you put that in the cliff notes of your little summary here of who you spoke to? Because if you're over here talking to ancient alien people about, like, oh yeah, let's go talk about Assassin's Creed again for a minute. You look at, like, they talk about these people who came before, and they literally come to you in, like, visions and stuff. They're basically like God beings. It kind of reinforces some of that pyramid building alien stuff, where it like crosses the line on like 2 or 3 spots
Try again.
where they're like, "We made you for what you are." It's like, okay, are they gods or are they aliens? You gotta decide here, because you're kind of crossing it.
Use my rifle. If you were in the 10th mountain, you know how to use a scope.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, Cope, I know how to
That's
use a scope.
see, that's all I'm asking.
Got him. Nice shot.
Oh, God damn it, it wasn't a kill shot. He got away.
No, that's okay. You wounded him. He'll bleed out soon enough.
Yes,
You just gotta
correct.
track him.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Well, that's why at the beginning of every game they give you that little warning that pops up for 5 seconds that says this is a historical fiction game, not represented by actual figures in history, and not telling you actual stories of history. Blah 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 blah. You know?
Yeah, but you get the same warning at the beginning of Anchorman.
Losing too much blood.
That's very true. Exactly. And now to use this moment to plug into ourselves very quickly, and if you don't mind, I'd like to just say it.
Okay.
Testimony LLC, we do plan on rolling out shortly. We gotta
look,
make some
Cope,
content here. So anybody who might be interested in having a professional perspective on a podcast or a video call or something, we do want to actually share the words of professionals rather than how we say pseudo archaeology shows that you might find on the Big H channel or the other channel. That just I don't maybe. But we would love to collaborate with you.
Those feet.
Listen, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to let Jake take this one.
Good luck,
No,
Jake.
that's fair. Go for it. No, so we did have serious conversations about that. There are plenty of examples out there of people who just kind of help fuel that, and we've always said that we would rather educate people the correct way. So, I mean, everybody in this Discord chat has been awesome for having conversations with, and we'd love to have even more conversations with you guys in the near future. So, if you'd like to have conversations like that with us, we're more than happy to help fuel those and put some of those out online. I know a lot of you guys already have podcasts, and a lot of you already have videos that you put out. So if you would welcome us as guests at any time, we would be more than happy to join you. If not, we would be more than happy to have you as guests on ours. But I think this community is really great, and I'm really glad that we have this Discord up and running. So that's a great thank you to the wonderful organizers of this event here. And you guys have done a really great job at putting this together. I'm super impressed.
Hey, Deke, we're getting low on supplies. Do some more meat if you get a chance.
Shit, okay. I guess it's been a while since we did any hunting. I'll see if I can scare up some meat while I'm out. Yeah, I had Cope give you a few planners, believe it or not.
Cope? Shit, I don't believe it. Thanks, Deke.
See you, Bruce, man.
This is Radio Free Oregon. The truth shall set you free. I grew up in these here woods. My grandfather taught me all about hunting. Funny how it still works in a world he never would have dreamed of. I built my first tree house to use as a deer. Getting height on your target helps your aim and keeps you safe.
I think that's a great idea.
Back then, I took out my first.
That would be really cool.
Renee.
That is an interesting point here in the comments. It says, but a disclaimer at the beginning doesn't really help people not to take certain images or historical stories to be taken for true, does it? That's very valid, and that was the whole point of the Anchorman joke. Is it doesn't. How many people do you know who start up a video game and just start spamming the A button until they get into the game? Pretty much everybody who doesn't want to wait. Like pretty much everybody, you know. So you're not gonna like, oh, look, it's like people who see the
this is gonna be it.
See the FBI warning at the beginning of a movie. Oh no, I'm not gonna illegally watch this on a media share website online. It's like you can't ensure any of that. There are always gonna be people who are just gonna ignore it. And this was like I was saying yesterday, and or whenever we had the Friday in Mike's panel, we were talking about. I'd mentioned his myth and culture class that I was in, and there were students in there who we went on to Norse mythology, and there were like 3 or 4 kids in the class whose hands shot up immediately. They were like, I know all of this stuff already because I played God of War. I was like, okay, but you realize God of War isn't like exactly a copy of Norse mythology, correct? It's like an interpretation done by people who want big bad bosses for a Greek god character who's now doing things because his wife died. It's like, it's not exactly mythology. And if anyone's played through the end of the game, I'm not going to put any spoilers out, but it is 100% not in tune with Norse mythology. There are very many things that are not connected there. I started off that game, and since he's so early in the game, I was like, who is he supposed to be? And I could not figure it out. I was just baffled. I was like,
damn it, so close.
I'm like, who's this biker gang psycho? And what is the significance of this storyline? And it just kept like, oh, and this person is this god. And it was like, but are they? Because they don't seem anything like it.
Yeah.
And
I heard something.
yeah. I'm still bitter that they didn't let me go to Asgard. So you know what? I'm just going to leave a pin in that, and we'll talk about it when the next God of War game comes out, and they let me go to Asgard, and it's a misrepresentation of the entire thing. Because it's probably going to look like Thor's Asgard.
So really what you're telling us is you'll talk about it when that happens.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. 100%.
Oh, if that's the case, Asgard's right down the street from me.
Yeah.
You're like, how do you get to, you go into the whole Yggdrasil, and you're just like, all right, how do we get to Asgard? They're like, all right, so you're going to want to take this needle. You're going to want to put about 2 inches into your arm. Just want to push the plunger, man. That's how we get to Asgard.
Well, look at it this way, you poor son of a bitch. At least you weren't torn apart by freaks.
Oh, yeah, so back
If you
to
were weak, you might have become
not
one
consulting
yourself, you know that.
archaeologists, maybe? This was a good one. I'm going to scroll back for a second. It was,
What do you want? Stay back.
I just want to talk.
Day's gone.
So here's a really good point that you had made on the first panel of the weekend, where you had said that everything in a game like Elder Scrolls is made, everything in the game is an artifact. And I thought that was a really nice point to go off of for this. And
Yes.
Scott, you probably have some opinions since you're the one who's played the game most.
Yes. I am.
How?
Some opinion on everything is an artifact?
No, how this relates to, you had a
Farewell.
point earlier of how you would relate this to being an archaeologically significant game.
Everyone was
Not an archaeologically significant game, but that
All right, listen up. We're gonna do this the easy way or the hard way. The easy way.
so bring it back to a point earlier.
Digging your way through freaker shit.
Archifanies, I think Archifantasies, sorry, can't talk today. I believe you had made this point about how,
about you breathing in all this contaminated air.
nope, I lost my train of thought.
Yes. Okay.
We originally started this discussion. It's been a long weekend. We originally started the discussion of which game we were going to use, and honestly, we did go through a few different games. We were originally going to do something like Halo or Destiny and talk about the Forerunners.
A knife wound. She was cut.
We made jokes about the abandoned research facilities in Destiny and how we can do similar to some of Scott's work of silos and Cold War and more modern industrial archaeology.
Like you said,
So I feel that that's a significant thing, and especially because I felt no one was addressing any. Well, there are a few, but we were going to address some post-apocalyptic features and how it can affect the overwhelming existence of us when you're living in a post-pandemic world, especially when a game that takes place in the year of 2020.
I can't promise anything, but I'll check.
And I'm gonna go with you.
No, you can't. Please, you don't. Hey, you don't understand. I'll fucking shoot you.
Not before I shoot you.
Okay, look, if you're gonna fucking kill me, do it, okay?
So, one of the places that train of thought was going, one of the many, Sorry, I worked like 90 hours this week. I'm
You
mentally I have no bandwidth left. So one of the places that was going was going back to the discussion on like people who look at like the Maya and say, well, like they disappeared off the face of the earth and all that. And you're like, no, they're still around. But like you can look at,
If I don't hear from you.
I mean, it's a much larger and obviously sensationalized version of, to use a term that really isn't the right term, but it's all I can think of right now, like societal collapse, and how people are moving away from each other to be with like-minded individuals, creating new communities out of the fallout of that, and how people anticipate that would happen versus what we can tell from the archaeological record, and from living histories, the differences there. How like people are just like in this game, you're seeing the whole world. You can explore all of Eastern Oregon in this, after the world completely shuts down. You can go into old gas stations, you can look inside old cars, and you're even utilizing some of the things left over. Granted, it's all combat purposes, but you're still making use of some of the artifacts that you find. And there are also tourism things that you can find, postcards and maps and bumper stickers scattered all over the world. I think there's like 200 and something of them. And just kind of looking at the difference between how it has happened in real life, and how people anticipate it in a more sensationalized context.
Okay, get some shut eye, Boozman. I'll tell you about it later.
What do you? Oh, sorry. Were you gonna say something?
Soon, real soon. Look, as soon as your arm heals. O'Brien. Oh, you son of a bitch, you better radio me. You hear me, O'Brien? You're on this channel? God damn it. Hey, you better get back to me or I'm going to track you down. You got that? Oh, God damn it. Come on, O'Brien. Move back to me. Move back!
I see.
Track down the chopper. Was it the same guy?
So that was part of the reason why.
Yeah.
No, that was part of the reason what we were looking into. Like, Scott had picked this game, and he was similar at concept to that. It's like, so what do you think is going to happen to people? Like, to generalize a little more, what do you think is going to happen to people in a scenario like this? It's like, well, we think they're going to react this way, and that's why there's so much allure behind a post-apocalyptic game, to an extent of, what do you think is going to happen in this next stage? Or what do you think might have happened if these people had acted this way? I wanted to touch pretty organically into Sebastian's comment in the chat that says, what's the solution to some of these things? Like, either invent your own mythology that has nothing to do with real life mythology, or to keep it true to what we know. And that was a reference back to the conversation they were having in the chat about Assassin's Creed. But that is a really interesting point. Like, when you're creating a game, what's the better path when you're making a game like this. When you're making a game that's a sandbox game, you're making a game that's an open world exploration, it's gonna lose some touch with some of, like we were talking about with God of War. God of War has in touch with some mythology, but you don't want to get to the point where, okay, how much gray area do we have that we're like kind of verging on it being made up more than it is actually true to true mythology. And it's like, who are you disrespecting if you do that? We were talking about this with a few horror games the other day. We were like, if you're doing that and you're using that specific figure that is usually referenced as a taboo topic that we're not even going to mention, it's like that. What point are you appropriating it? And what point are you kind of just creating a completely new storyline? Which then leads into the conversation the other day on, which will also be continued later today, on Horizon Zero Dawn. What point are you taking aspects of other things, cultures, peoples, and ideas, and then kind of, to use a overused terminology, melting pot usage them into this kind of gross abomination of appropriation and insult to peoples and cultures around the world?
Needed this.
I mean, yeah, that's really what it comes down. That's the TLDR of the entire conversation.
That's it.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, short round, that's a good point. The games that are completely original are not free from scrutiny. And that's why that discussion that we're probably going to end up having later, so I don't want to go too much into it now, of a game like Horizon Zero Dawn. If you decide to call one of the enemies who is of a separate tribe from the character you play as in Horizon Zero Dawn, and you call that group of people a savage, you are then taking those points that, like, as you said, everything's appropriation, but like you are then taking those points that you really shouldn't be touching, and you are then just making it worse. And they're like, well, but we were trying to like take a bunch of themes from, it's like, okay, but if you're trying to and you were covering yourself now and you didn't talk to anybody from the cultures that you are appropriating for your game's storyline, maybe you should have done some questioning there whether you should actually do that. This was the same conversation I had the other day about, there's a video game out now. I've not been able to find in my research now whether or not it was actually a discussion with any indigenous peoples, but there is a game called This Land Is My Land, where you play as a Native American chief in the West, like cowboys and Native Americans storyline. It's like trying to be quote unquote more realistic, like Assassin's Creed. Like you're running around shooting guys with 10-gallon hats with arrows and stuff, and it looks beautiful. It looks on the surface, but then you look deeper and it's like made by a Ukrainian game studio, and you're like, oh, okay, we're getting a little bit far off here. Did you talk to a single person who's an indigenous people when you were making this game? And it's like there's nowhere that says they did, which just leads me to believe that they didn't. And that's where that problem area is. Yeah. Well, that's part of the conversation as well. That's why I'm so hesitant to look into it too much. Like, we as the people who live in this locale, we spend a lot of time over sensationalizing certain storylines and things throughout our own history. I mean, look at any John Wayne movie as example. That's not to say that you can't enjoy him as an actor. I was just making a point, so don't get on me about that if you really like John Wayne. But if you're going into that perspective, I mean, we hit that topic all the time. Look at the entire concept of the TV show Westworld. Like, it's literally about having people be able to, like, Red Dead Redemption. Like, these things are like specifically put out as humans love this. They want it. They want this content. So it's like if another like a Ukrainian studio is making a game like that, it's like, are you really mad at them? Because if we hype it up all the time, what do you think they're doing?
I think maybe we have a responsibility to say something and make sure that it's done responsibly, because it's a lot harder to change the pre-existing concepts around it in the U.S. But I mean, they're starting with a little bit more of a fresh slate, not a totally fresh slate, but a little bit more of one, in that it's not something that's already built into the dogma of their school system, right? When they're like, I don't have a lot of experience with the way that their school systems work over there and what they teach, but I'm sure that they don't teach that when Americans moved west, the Native Americans just gave us land and were our friends.
Hey, look. Someone's here.
Come on, guys, open up.
Hey, Zeke.
Who's the drifter that keeps bringing these in? Can't believe how busy he's been.
Gotta be Deke. Biker, right? See him all the time.
Bet you're here for your bike, right?
How's it going, Zanny?
So that was a really interesting thing I had noticed when I started paying for Disney Plus. You know, giving that corporation more money is a great idea. But what they had done with all of their Disney Vault movies, all of the old animated movies that we watched when we were all younger and everything,
it'll be locked away forever.
Yeah, locked away forever until you pay $7 a month. They went and they put a warning in front of those games and those movies, right? And I think that's similar to the content warning we were discussing with video games. The warning in front of a lot of those movies was basically stating, we are not going to censor out the racist themes that are in these Disney movies because we think that they serve as a good example of how not only have we changed throughout time, but also this is what representation shouldn't look like. And I couldn't tell at first if it was a complete legal cop-out for stopping the revolution against rewriting all of the Disney movies, because you get 50% of people are angry, like, how dare you ruin my childhood and take the Siamese cats out of Lady and the Tramp, and then other people are like, bro, it's cats, what's your problem? And when you put that warning in front, it's like, are they doing it for the purpose of covering their own tails, or are they doing it because somebody somewhere actually cared that there is misrepresentation in these games, and this hurts people. This makes people feel uncomfortable because it makes them feel like they're not receiving proper representation. I mean, you got more modern ones where you're having people with diversity being able to actually like fuel the story, write the story, be part of the story. It's like we were talking, God, I can't remember what game we were talking about the other day. Something where the entire cast was not white and they used all white actors. And we were talking about how that's a gray area for some people, but I personally am like, yeah, no, that's a no. And then we were talking about Ghost of Tsushima, which, funny enough, my brother is playing in the other room right now on his PlayStation. The entire cast is played by Asian actors, voice actors, and motion caption actors. And Marvel has the Shang-Chi movie coming out. They said like 95% of the cast is Asian, because it should be. So whereas we're trying not to go back and autocorrect too many things from the past, we also should recognize, like, this isn't the same thing as ripping down a Columbus statue, okay? This is very different. This is, do we do content warnings or do we stop? Exactly.
Okay, let's take a look around. Which way? You're mine now. This is it.
Well,
What do we got?
Well, that's even like we were discussing with different themes that you have in these games. And there were a few different games that when I dusted off my PlayStation 2 not long ago, and I had played a few different games, and I was like, oh, this was being deeply placed into a lot of people's brains when they were younger without them realizing that this is what this was. And as time goes on, people obviously use that horrible, well, people were less sensitive when you were younger. People were less sensitive back then. People weren't less sensitive to the material. People felt that they couldn't speak up over it because they would be shut down, or people didn't feel that anyone was going to listen to them, or for whatever reason, not to generalize reasons, but the same reason why with the Disney ones, it's like you don't want to rewrite over examples of how this can be used for education, but also at the same time, it's like, you don't want to enable it. Like, if they're going to remake a Disney movie that has a lot of racist undertones and sexist undertones, they change some things in it to make it better for the children who are watching it now. And I get that. Like, that's fine. But then you get the whole people running around saying that they're PC censoring everything. It's like, we're trying to teach children the right way. And if you want to sit down with them and you want to watch Dumbo and talk to them about the crows, you can do that on your own time. But make sure you actually have that conversation. It's like, people are too afraid, I think, sometimes to teach children. And I've had many conversations about this with people, and when I was in high school, or more so when I was in elementary school, I know, we didn't, in my town, we didn't go too far into talking about, like, Columbus, for example. Like, we were taught as the guy who discovered America, worded just like that. And it was like, that wasn't that long ago, you know. That's scary. That, I don't know if they're still teaching the right way. It's like, what, you want to use the words like murderer or rapist or anything with children? Like, that's the gray area. Like, where do you? And I think games do a good job at that, because newer games are going to have a little bit less what's the, you know, when we were talking about GameStop, more modern games have a lot less care for who plays them, or parents don't always do their research. So if you're putting themes like that into like a Call of Duty game, and you know that game's going to end up in the hands of a 13-year-old, like, what lessons do you teach them with that? And those kids are probably more likely to play a Fortnite game than they are to play a PlayStation 2 game, you know? So what are we teaching them when we give them these games? So as long as the games have proper education and representation, which, face it, most of them don't, that's where those lessons come through. People learn things they see in media.
Can of fuel.
Culture doesn't want to risk leaving it to the parents.
It's all about liability nowadays, and why would parents take that? And a lot of them don't have time, but we have a culture too. If you work 2 jobs to sustain yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's easy for a lot of people to say, here, sit here, play your iPad or something. You know, I mean, I get
if
it.
you've had kids, it goes that way very quickly.
It's like it goes
especially
down that
quarantine.
rabbit hole. Yeah, and parents, this was a whole conversation they've been having recently. It's hard when you have a full-time job, and I was talking to my cousin about this yesterday. She's an elementary school teacher. She's got 3 kids, and she's going to be like, half of their days are going to be remote learning in the fall. It's like it turns into make sure your brother does his homework, or like she can't handle all of that. And when you're looking at that with games, you end up playing, oh, what do you want to play? I want to play Fortnite. It's like, okay, well, I don't have the time to sit down and play a match of Fortnite with you to figure out what's in this game. So just go play it because you like it. But I digress on that point. It seems we do need to wrap it up soon. So if anyone has any other questions or points we want to hit before the end here. Anything?
Alrighty then.
Crickets.
Yeah. Well, that's just because you could probably hear them from my gecko in the other.
Ha 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 ha. I see what you did there.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I will be around later for that. I think we're generalizing it to misrepresentation or racism in gaming tonight. So I will be live on that one too to furthermore destroy this analogies in Assassin's Creed and other.
I'm going to give you a challenge, Jacob. I'm going to
Is
challenge
it a challenge
you.
to not talk about Assassin's Creed?
It is. It is a challenge to find any other allegory.
I'm gonna go. You tune in later and you'll see what other games I use. How about that?
I expect 0, but okay.
You get 1 shot of whiskey per 15 minutes of you not mentioning Assassin's
I see
Creed.
where this is going. All right.
Yeah.
fair.
So see, this is what we'll do: is once everything is safe for us to go to again, me and Bruce will go to Mac and Waltz again, and I will buy
Okay.
you a shot
Whiskey
of
flight?
their top shelf bourbons for every 15 minutes that you brought something up that wasn't Assassin's Creed.
All right. I'm gonna put a little shot collar on myself so I don't go to the Assassin's.
Yeah. What time's your next panel? Because I'm gonna have to fine tooth
Monitor
and
this?
record it. What?
Is it? What are you gonna monitor me?
Yeah, we gotta do the shot counter.
All right. Fair enough. Well, there are plenty of other games to talk about, so hopefully I don't mess that up.
No, you won't.
I called it a challenge for a reason.
It's gonna be work. Yeah, I agree too. In the comments, Assassin's Creed is awesome. That's why we talk about it.
We never said it wasn't. We're just saying, bruh.
Assassin's Creed is, for Jacob, it's been a conversational crutch, and we need to
Can I
wean him
talk
off
about
of that.
Ubisoft still? Or is
Oh,
that a
don't get
no-go?
me started with Ubi.
Can I talk about Ubisoft still, or is that a no-go?
What about Ubisoft? Get their servers fixed?
No, because Ubisoft's whole with the other new games coming out, because those are fair points as well.
Okay, as long as you don't parlay it into Assassin's Creed.
Fine.
You
I'll
can only
take the
focus
challenge.
on Siege and Battletoads.
Battletoads. Okay. Battletoads
The
and
anthropology of Battletoads.
Raymond. See, now Raymond has no arms, but he does have hands. We'll talk about his adventures and his sidekicks.
As he traverses
and which
through
one
society.
of them are racist. All right.
Sounded like a
that was
newscaster.
Okay. The whole thing is a newscaster too. I'm gonna need a few more cups of coffee before we get up.
Don't overdo it on the caffeine because will lose control and you'll go back to Assassin's Creed, and you will get no bourbon.
Look, it will be the end of the day. Anybody who hears me talk about Assassin's Creed, I'm not going to turn this into a drinking game, but you know what to do. All right, well, thank you everybody who joined us today.
Yeah, thank you.
We're at a good group talking. We had some really great conversations in the chat portion. I want to thank you guys for coming. Again, I want to thank the organizers for organizing for us. It must have been fun and a bit of work, so we commend you and your efforts. I do want to do a last quick plug here. We will be pushing out some more gameplay and conversations in the future, so anybody who wants to tune in, I will post on our Discord there if we have any further conversations we want to discuss that are outside of these panels, because these panels are great, but unfortunately they're only lasting for the weekend. So hopefully you'll tune in for us in the future, and we'll love to tune in to some of you guys. So thank you for everything.